Hey, my name's Will. I work with Right to Survive Radio out of Portland, Oregon.
Okay, so where are you from and what's your connection to the PIC?
Well, I work on a radio project that is run by people who are currently experiencing homelessness, and in Portland, a huge population that has been criminalized and been subject to the violence of the prison industrial complex is poor people of color, and the homeless. We recently had a police assassination of a homeless person who is in a mental crisis, and this is actually the third killing that we've had recently of police, of members of our community. So what our community is trying to figure out right now is what are some serious alternatives to the police and prison industrial complex that we can provide care and support for each other, but do it in a way where we're not having to activate a system that's pretty much systematically destroyed our ability to care and support for each other.
Have you guys thought of, what are some of the ideas that you've thought of?
Well, there's a couple different groups in town. Rose City Cop Watch has been working on empowering people to actually cop watch in their neighborhood, and they've teamed up with the campaign called the Fire Fresh Hour campaign to try to fire one of the cops that shot an unarmed black man who was in a mental health crisis in the back earlier this year. And the idea behind that is that we're trying to directly challenge the police association, which is the police union in our town, because they have blocked through this thing called mandatory arbitration any attempts to fire police officers who are unaccountable within the past year. So we're trying to intervene in their contract negotiations this summer because the police union has actually filed a grievance with the State Labor Relations Board to try to keep those contract negotiations closed. And so we're trying to intervene in that to make sure that A, those contract negotiations are open, and B, that the officers who are unaccountable to our community right now are able to be responsible for the violence that they inflict on our community.
So what are you going to do moving forward? What's your next step?
Well, our step on Right to Survive Radio is to provide a conduit for people who are directly experiencing poverty, directly experiencing the violence of whether prison industrial complex, capitalism, gentrification, to be able to have their voice on the air, because we really believe that the solutions to a lot of the problems that we face are going to come from the bottom up. They're not going to come from politicians or technical bureaucrats. They're from the people who experience this on a day-to-day basis. So our radio is really geared towards getting those voices on the air, and more than that is making sure that the people who are experiencing systematic inequality are actually able, through the technical skills and the empowerment that comes with that, to be able to put their own voices on the air. And so we're really geared towards that. And to do that, we've partnered with a group called Reclaim Portland, which is a squatting advocacy group that facilitates occupation of bank foreclosed homes. And so we're moving folks who are experiencing homelessness into these foreclosed homes, and then in that time that they don't have to spend going to shelter, going to food sites, they can be spent making media. And so we're creating an autonomous economic circuit in which people can both survive but also thrive and practice that resiliency that will allow them to go on and create movement and create the sort of bottom-up change that we want to see in our community.
Cool. Anything else you want to add?
Well, I'm really excited to get in touch with y'all and share radio content, because our radio station has a pretty cool way, KBOO 90.7 FM out of Portland, has a pretty cool file sharing, content sharing sort of network, and it'd be really great to connect to other small radio stations. I grew up in a small rural town in Utah, and I think the biggest thing that I see that needs to happen in rural places like where I'm from is alternative radio, because what we have right now is either corporate-controlled stations or right-wing Christian radio, but there's nothing in between, and a lot of the gaps in communication that are happening right now that can justify whether it's intense classism, anti-immigrant reaction, a lot of that is happening in spaces where there isn't bottom-up people-controlled media. So, low-power FM transmitter, file-sharing networks, I think those are the sort of infrastructure that we can definitely be looking to build in the next 5 years or so to be able to really have a shift in how media and content is geared towards a lot of these rural communities that are kind of bearing the brunt of a lot of the violence as deindustrialization happens, as capital flight happens, and the prison industrial complex comes and inserts themselves in these small communities. So connecting projects like ours in Portland with kind of smaller communities outside metropolitan areas is something I think is strategically really important.
Cool.